Welcome back to the deep dive. And Happy New Year. Well, I say happy.
Depending on which side of the river you're on in West London, maybe not so happy.
Exactly. I mean, we are, what, 3 days into 2026? And Chelsea Football Club has already dropped the first, well, truly seismic shock of the sporting year.
Seismic is, I think, the only word for it. And frankly, even by the extraordinary standards of chaos we've come to expect at Stamford Bridge, this feels, well, it feels unprecedented.
It does.
We're talking about the immediate dismissal of Enzo Maresca on New Year's Day.
Just hours before a massive game.
A colossal game against Manchester City, his old club. And now they are, and you almost can't believe you're saying it, looking for their fifth permanent manager since May 2022.
It's just staggering stuff, and that is precisely why we have to do a full deep dive on this. Our mission today is really to unpack the chaos, because if you just look at the facts on the surface, they don't make any sense.
They don't stack up at all.
Maresca leaves with the club sitting fifth in the Premier League. He'd only just got them back into the Champions League, which was a huge financial goal for the owners, and he'd won 2 trophies in 2025. So this clearly wasn't just a simple sacking for bad results. Something much deeper, more structural was going on here.
That's the key, isn't it? We have to look beyond the pitch, beyond the last few results. Was this just about a dip in form, or was Maresca actively trying to get out? Or, and this is what most of the reports are suggesting, was it just the inevitable endpoint of this massive clash? A clash between an ambitious manager and the club's, corporate project.
Right. The whole private equity meets elite football problem.
Exactly. A world where the manager, it doesn't matter how successful they are, is basically a disposable part, and the project is king.
Okay. So let's do that. Let's unpack it all. I think we have to start at the beginning, don't we?
Yeah.
Chart the highs and the lows of his tenure, because it was incredibly brief.
It was a complete whirlwind. He comes in, June 2024, signs this huge 5-year contract. Everyone's very impressed with how he got Leicester straight back up.
And for a little while, it looked good.
It looked very good. The success was rapid. It was impressive. After 2 years of, just complete turbulence under the new ownership, it did feel like maybe, just maybe, the ship was being steadied.
And he hit the main target straight away. The big one.
The primary financial mandate, yeah. End of the 2024-25 season, he gets them a top 4 finish. He gets them Champions League qualification. After a 2-year absence, that was monumental for them.
It protects the asset value, which is everything to this ownership.
It's absolutely critical. That UCL money is vital for FFP, especially the amount they've spent. But it wasn't just the money, was it? There was actual silverware.
Right. Trophies in the cabinet.
He won the Europa Conference League, and they won it well. Smashed Real Betis 4-1 in the final. And then the big one for them, the FIFA Club World Cup.
Beating PSG 3-0 in that final in July 2025.
A very strong PSG side, yeah. That was seen as a major, major highlight.
It was, but let's be honest, even when they were lifting that trophy, the critics were already out in force.
Oh, immediately. There was this constant sort of undercurrent of dismissal. People were calling the Club World Cup a Mickey Mouse Cup or a glorified community shield.
So even during the good times, people weren't convinced.
No. And it wasn't just, normal football banter. It suggested a real skepticism that any of this was genuine fundamental progress, especially when you measure it against the mountains of cash they'd spent on the squad. It was a sign that something was already simmering just beneath the surface.
And that simmering friction, it just boiled over completely as we got into late 2025. The whole story around Maresca, the football, it all just changed so dramatically. The decline was really sharp.
It was a shocking regression, really. If you look at the stats just leading up to New Year's Day, Chelsea had won just one of their last 7 league games.
1 in 7.
And they only managed to get 6 points from 6 games in December. A disastrous run. And that let Arsenal, the league leaders, just stretch their lead to 15 points.
And what about his overall record, his win percentage?
Well, his league win percentage was 51.9%, which, for a first season is respectable. A lot of recent Chelsea managers would have taken that.
But respectable isn't enough at Chelsea, is it?
That's the crucial point. It puts him below the elite bracket. When you compare him to the guys who brought sustained success there, Conte, Mourinho, Ancelotti, Tuchel, his number is noticeably lower.
Right.
Even Claudio Ranieri, way back when, had a slightly better rate. So the stats showed that, he could win a cup, he could deliver moments, but maybe not the consistency you need to actually win the Premier League. And that's the real benchmark.
And beyond the stats, the style of play became the real lightning rod for the fans, didn't it? Forget the trophies for a second. It was the football they were watching week in, week out.
That was the central complaint, this idea of tactical rigidity, a complete lack of a plan B. The words you heard from fans and pundits were turgid, slow, and, well, predictable.
And this wasn't just a vague feeling. There were specific tactical choices that were driving people mad.
Oh, absolutely. We have to get into the details here. The number one issue, the one everyone talked about, was his absolute devotion to the inverted fullback system.
Right. So this often meant taking someone like Malo Gusto
A naturally attacking, very wide player.
and just sticking him in central midfield when they had the ball.
Exactly. Now, let's be clear. The theory behind it, the Guardiola school of thought, it's sound. You want to create a numerical overload in the middle, control possession, recycle the ball. It also helps you defend transitions because your fullback is already central.
Yeah.
But it all depends on the player you're asking to do it.
And the consensus was that Gusto just wasn't the right man for that specific job.
That's what the fans were screaming from the stands. Gusto is electric down the right wing, but they argued he just didn't have the technical composure or the quick decision-making you need in a crowded midfield.
So the whole system's just slowed down.
They just ground to a halt.
Yeah.
You had slow ball progression, sideways passing. That's where the turgid label came from. It felt like Maresca was forcing a square peg into a round hole just to stick to his system. And in doing so, he was killing one of his best attacking threats.
And the other big tactical complaint was about Cole Palmer, the team's best player by a country mile, and he was often being played out of position.
That's right. I mean, everyone can see Palmer is at his best coming in from the right or playing as a number 10 centrally, but Maresca just kept pushing him out to the left wing.
Which to the fans must have seemed like madness.
It felt like a complete waste of his talent. It looked like the manager was putting his system, his philosophy, ahead of his best player's strengths. It just added to this feeling that Maresca was just too stubborn, too rigid.
And we can't really talk about this era, brief as it was, without mentioning the discipline, or the lack of it. It was, frankly, a bit of a farce.
It was an absolute stain on their record. The number of avoidable red cards was just shocking. Time and time again, you'd see them drop crucial points because a player had been sent off for something stupid, a moment of petulance.
It points to a lack of control, surely.
It has to. It goes beyond bad luck. It suggests a lack of discipline in the squad, which, a lot of people felt just mirrored Maresca's own personality on the touchline. He was very intense, very prone to frustration.
He did try and defend that, didn't he? I remember him saying something about it.
He did. He said he was proud if the players showed his intensity, that it was part of a winning mentality. But he did sort of grudgingly admit they could improve. But for the board, seeing these incredibly expensive assets getting themselves suspended needlessly, it just became another massive point of frustration.
So you've got this perfect storm brewing. The tactics are stale, the fans are turning, the discipline is awful, and the results have fallen off a cliff through December. And this is where the story just accelerates, doesn't it? It goes from a football problem to a full-blown crisis in about 48 hours.
It really did. His last game in charge was that 2-2 draw with Bournemouth at home, December 30th.
A really damaging result.
Hugely damaging, dropping 2 points at home to a mid-table side. And it meant Chelsea had dropped a league-high 15 points from winning positions that season, which is just a catastrophic failure of game management.
But the real explosion didn't happen at the final whistle. It happened during the game, that substitution.
That was the moment.
Yeah.
Late in the game, he takes off Cole Palmer, the star player. And the reaction from Stamford Bridge was instant. It was loud. It was just audible booing all around the stadium.
And that wasn't just about one decision, was it?
No, it was a public vote of no confidence in the manager. But, and this is crucial to the whole story, that substitution wasn't just a simple tactical choice. It was the ultimate symptom of all the structural problems we're about to get into. Maresca later had to say he was managing Palmer's minutes on medical advice.
Right. And then what followed was, well, from the sounds of it, highly unprofessional.
It went from bad to worse almost immediately. Maresca doesn't do his post-match media duties. His assistant, Willie Caballero, comes out and says the manager's unwell.
Which nobody believed for a second.
Of course not. The reports came out straight away that he was actually locked in talks about his future. The general understanding is that he went straight from the touchline to the director's office and told him he wanted out.
So he jumped before he was pushed. He initiated it.
He absolutely chose his moment, probably knew he had the Man City interest as leverage. And the stories about how he actually left are, I think, the most damning part. Reports claim he just got changed and left, didn't say goodbye to the players, didn't say anything to his staff. One insider called it atrocious behavior. They saw it as clear proof that he had mentally downed tools. Another source said his actions over the last couple of months were of a man who was just focused on getting his next job, a job with more power, like his hero Guardiola has.
And that feeling that he'd checked out because he didn't have the power he wanted, that takes us right to the heart of it all, doesn't it? The massive, irreparable conflict over control, the core issue of this ownership model where, as you said, the project is king.
This is the absolute crux of it. This explains why Chelsea are stuck in this endless cycle. Maresca, he's delivered Champions League football, he's delivered 2 trophies, he felt the pressure on him was completely unfair given the working conditions.
He kept making comparisons to other managers, didn't he?
All the time. He was publicly asking for the kind of influence and backing that Arteta has at Arsenal, or that Klopp had at Liverpool. He felt he'd earned the right to have that same level of control.
But the ownership's entire philosophy is the complete opposite of that.
It is fundamentally opposed to it. Their mantra is simple, and it is inflexible. The project is king. It's a private equity model. The goal is to maximize asset value and protect the institution, not to hand all the power to one single personality.
So they don't want a manager, they want a head coach.
Precisely. They want to be able to slot in a compliant coach who will follow the script written by the sporting directors. And the club's argument, their defense, is that Maresca knew all of this. He knew what the restrictions were when he signed that 5-year deal.
But knowing it and living it are two different things. And according to his camp, it wasn't just restriction, it was outright micromanagement.
That's the accusation, yes. There are multiple credible reports of serious interference from the top. We've heard that the co-owner, Behdad Eghbali, was directly involving himself in the dressing room. And, maybe most damagingly, that he was sitting in on tactical debriefs after every single match.
Hang on. A co-owner, a financier, is sitting in on tactical debriefs. How is a manager supposed to have any authority in that situation?
You can't. It's incredibly corrosive. The manager has to be the authority figure. If the players see the owner second-guessing tactics minutes after the game, it just completely undermines it. It suggests a total lack of trust in his competence.
And then you have the most cynical accusation of all, the asset flip theory.
This is where the business model and the sport just collide head-on. Maresca's camp claimed he was being pressured to select certain players or even substitute them, not for tactical reasons, but to protect or enhance their transfer value.
So using the first team as a shop window.
A shop window,
Right.
Or a player trading platform. That was the accusation. Basically playing the assets to keep their market value high.
And Chelsea, of course, have strongly denied this.
Vehemently.
Yeah.
But the claim does fit with their overall strategy, doesn't it? Their business model is signing young, high-potential players on these massive long-term contracts. If your ultimate goal is to make a profitable asset flip when you sell the club, then playing certain players to maintain their value, well, it makes a very cynical kind of business sense.
And that conflict played out in public over transfers, too. It wasn't just behind the scenes.
No, not at all. The big one was last August, after Levi Colwill did his ACL in preseason. Maresca, quite rightly, was worried about his defense, and he publicly demanded the club sign a new, experienced center back.
But the club said no. They wanted an internal solution.
An internal solution. And the reason for it tells you everything you need to know about the project. They said that signing a new center back would discourage their academy prospect, Josh Aschenpong, and might make him ask for a transfer.
So protecting a future asset was more important than the manager's immediate needs for the season.
That's it in a nutshell. They expected Maresca to sacrifice results in the here and now to protect future capital.
And that led to that brilliant, sarcastic comment he made.
Oh, the new center back line. Just perfect. He's driving into the training ground, his young son is in the car, and a reporter asks if the boy is a new signing. And Maresca, with his deadpan delivery, just says, "He is our new center back."
It was such a public show of frustration.
It was him basically telling the world that he felt completely unsupported, that he was being told to just get on with it, regardless of the impact on the season.
And as if that wasn't enough, there was also this constant friction with the medical department, which, again, comes back to control and protecting the investment.
This might be the most fascinating part of the whole thing. Remember that comment he made after the Everton win in December? He said he'd had his worst 48 hours at the club.
Yes.
That was reportedly aimed squarely at the medical team and their restrictive policies on player availability.
Why did they have so much power over the manager?
Because of the money. The billions of pounds invested in these young players on long contracts. They aren't just footballers, they're financial assets. And the medical staff's #1 job is to protect that multi-billion-pound investment.
So they had the final say on who could play and for how long.
They had almost total authority on training loads, on availability, and crucially, on how many minutes a player could have in a match.
So Maresca was being forced to make substitutions that could lose them the game.
Exactly that. He had to manage minutes for key players, like Palmer. The medical team would say, right, he could only play 60, maybe 65 minutes to prevent injury, to protect the asset.
So he takes Palmer off, the team suffers, they drop points, and he gets all the blame from the fans in the stadium.
And the fans have no idea that the decision was forced on him. It's a no-win situation. He was constantly being set up as the fall guy for policies he had no power to change.
Which makes that Bournemouth game, the booing when Palmer came off, the absolute peak of the problem. He was forced by the club to make a decision that alienated the fans and cost him his credibility. And in that moment, he must have just thought, I'm done.
I think that was the symbolic tipping point. It just crystallized how impossible his position was. He delivered trophies, he delivered Champions League football, he felt he'd earned the right to run his team. And when he was denied that and was being blamed for the consequences, the breakdown was total. He saw no way to succeed under those conditions.
And right at the moment of that internal breakdown, this massive job opportunity opens up elsewhere. Which brings us to the elephant in the room, the Manchester City angle.
What's the ultimate, was it a stepping stone or was it a betrayal scenario? Maresca was always highly thought of at City. He'd coached there under Guardiola, he knew the club inside out.
And he made a very clear statement of intent when he changed his agent.
He did. He moved to Jorge Mendes. And in football, when you sign with Mendes, everyone knows what it means. You're looking for a bigger job. And sure enough, the reports started coming out that he'd had talks with City intermediaries in October and December about possibly succeeding Pep.
Now, this is a key detail. He didn't do this behind their backs, did he?
No, and this is the bit that gets glossed over. He was apparently contractually required to tell Chelsea about these talks. So he did. And as you can imagine, that created massive tension. The board were, to use the reported word, pissed off. It just threw more fuel on the fire.
So if he was already looking at the City job, why leave Chelsea in the middle of the season and cause all this chaos? Why not just wait until the summer?
And that's where you get the two completely different stories, the two warring narratives.
Right.
Maresca's camp will tell you he was desperate. He had to get out of a toxic, micromanaged environment. The City link was a lifeboat, a way to escape before the mess at Chelsea completely destroyed his reputation.
But the other side of the story paints him as the villain.
Completely. The club's camp and many in the media see him as an egomaniac, a snake, someone who only ever saw Chelsea as a stepping stone.
And that he engineered his exit when things got tough.
That's the argument, that he used the City link and timed his departure perfectly to save face when the team's form dipped. That instead of fighting through it, he just bailed to protect his own brand. And they point to the way he left, no media, no goodbyes, as proof that he'd already mentally checked out.
It's a classic PR battle, isn't it? Both sides briefing against each other to control the narrative.
Entirely. Was he a victim of an impossible structure? Or did he lack the grit for a top job? The truth is probably somewhere in the middle. But leaving right before you're due to play Manchester City, well, that's a detail you just can't ignore.
Right, and let's talk about that match, because Chelsea have literally no time to think about this. They have to face the league leaders immediately, which takes us straight into the implications of all this for the rest of their season.
It's just total immediate instability, the worst possible situation. The under-21s coach, Calum McFarlane, has been thrown into the deep end to take charge of the game.
And he's got no support staff.
None. Maresca's entire team, Willy Caballero, all his coaches, they all walked out with him. McFarlane is starting completely from scratch.
So you have this classic question before the City game. Do they get the famous new manager bounce? Or does the instability just consume them?
Well, Chelsea have a weird history of thriving in chaos, don't they? So a bounce isn't impossible. Maybe the players feel liberated from those rigid tactics we talked about.
But the manager was popular with a lot of them.
He was. And his exit was so sudden, so acrimonious. That creates a huge amount of emotional turmoil in a dressing room. McFarlane has an almost impossible job trying to rally a group of players who must feel like they are right back to square one.
Looking beyond that one game, they need a permanent boss. But based on everything we've said, The profile they're looking for is incredibly specific.
It is incredibly restrictive. The club have already made it clear. They will not be changing their style of play, and they will not be changing their ownership model. They want a head coach, someone who is happy to work within the structure, not a manager who's going to demand control.
They want compliance.
Above all else.
And the name that keeps coming up, the leading candidate, seems to be Liam Rowe Sr.
He is the obvious internal choice, isn't he? He's currently at Strasbourg, which is the other club in the Blue Co ownership group. He's got a great reputation for developing young players, which is key for them. And he already understands and accepts the Blue Co model. He's a known quantity.
But taking him from Strasbourg mid-season would be hugely controversial for their fans.
Oh, massively. The Strasbourg fans already feel like they're just a feeder club. This would confirm all their worst fears. But from the Chelsea hierarchy's point of view, he's a much safer bet than bringing in an outsider who will just start demanding power all over again.
Okay, so if it's not Rowe Sr., who else is on the list? Who else fits that compliant head coach profile?
Well, Roberto De Zerbi is a name that won't go away. He was interviewed before Maresca, and Behdad Eghbali is apparently a big admirer. Kieran McKenna at Ipswich is another. Francesco Farioli at Porto fits the bill.
Young, adaptable coaches.
Exactly. But a big name, someone like Oliver Glasner at Palace, is seen as very unlikely. His tactics don't fit, and he'd want too much control. They're not looking for a big personality. They're looking for a good company man.
And what about the players in all this? What's the impact in that dressing room? We said Maresca was popular.
This is probably the biggest immediate danger for the club. One source said that despite everything, Maresca was bringing a bit of stability, and now they're back to square one. The fear is that all this chaos, all these public stories about the club being an asset flip project,
That the big players will want out.
that your most valuable assets, the guys you've spent hundreds of millions on, Cole Palmer, Enzo Fernandez, Moises Caicedo, will start pushing to leave.
They're all in these massive 8-year contracts, though.
They are. But contracts don't hold a player who feels their career is stagnating in chaos. They were sold a project about winning things. If they feel they're just part of a financial strategy, they will want to move to a club that offers stability and a genuine chance at major trophies.
And that just brings us back to this depressing, unavoidable cycle. Maresca is the 5th permanent manager they've sacked since May 2022. It's clearly a systemic problem.
It's not just a suggestion, it's confirmation. The constant churn proves there's a fundamental flaw in the model. The structure basically guarantees that any manager who has a bit of success will then demand more power.
And the moment they do,
The moment they ask for the control needed to actually compete for the league title, they clash with the project is king philosophy. They become a liability instead of an asset, and they're out the door. Until they change that core philosophy, this revolving door is just going to keep on spinning.
A stunning end to his time, then. A mix of bad results and this huge, irreparable clash between an ambitious coach and a private equity model that is just ruthless about protecting its assets.
And that really leaves us with a big question for you, the listener, to think about. If Chelsea continues with this exact model prioritizing financial control and player resale value over everything else, can they ever attract a truly elite manager who can bring them sustained success? Or are they just destined to be this incredibly expensive stepping stone for ambitious coaches and talented young players? The debate isn't really about Maresca anymore. It's about whether the project itself is built to fail. Is the manager's ambition the problem, or is it the ownership's rigid control? That is the structural issue they still haven't solved.